Advanced engineering in the temples of the pharaohs. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
1.21 gigawatts! And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents and skrptards. To Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science. Very late tonight.
Yes.
On this high atop this plateau, surrounded by dusty bones. So first of all, I want to say thanks to all of you who asked, did we save the trees? We did. Save the trees.
Oh yeah.
That was quite an adventure. After we finished the podcast last week, we went out into the blowing maelstrom, and
that's right.
in the middle of the night,
off until 4:30 in the morning.
That's right.
And yeah,
it
was really hard.
It was, but we got it done, and no trees died, as far as I know.
No, they look great.
Yep. So the Watcher was working an event tonight. Actually, we were all working events. We had a big event at our place of employment, which we just got back from, which is why it's so late. It's like 10:20.
Yeah, the Watchers at the Alamo Dome.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
In space. The space.
Yeah, the space Dome.
Alamo Dome.
Yeah, that's right.
So he is on his way from that event to his own space station deep beneath his secret space station, and he's going to be tuning in soon, but he's not here now. So we'll go ahead and start with space weather news from spaceweather.com. Noctilucent clouds around the South Pole. NASA's AIM spacecraft is monitoring the atmosphere above Antarctica. High altitude weather patterns there are beginning to favor the formation of noctilucent clouds. The electric blue clouds have not yet appeared, but they could just be days away. Monitor the latest satellite images right here on spaceweather.com. Also, a torrid explodes over Australia.
Whoa.
When the sun set over Swan Hill, Australia on November 6th, at first the sky began to darken as usual, then it exploded. I witnessed an incredible twilight fireball just as I arrived home from work at 8:08 p.m. AEDT, which is 9:08 UT, 7 minutes after local sunset, reports Michael Mattiazzo. The fireball's magnitude was at least -8, closer to -10, and multiple outbursts were observed before it completely disintegrated. The sonic boom arrived about 3 minutes later, sounding like a rumble of thunder, he adds. Local dogs were even barking at the sound. The vapor trail lasted about 25 minutes. Mattiazzo says the fireball streaked from east to west across the sky. The direction marks it as a likely Earth-grazing torrid fireball. This week, Earth is passing through a stream of debris from Comet Encke, the source of the annual torrid meteor shower. Gravel-sized meteoroids hitting Earth's upper atmosphere at 65,000 miles per hour are creating a spray of bright meteors from the constellation Taurus. Torrids are sometimes called the Halloween fireballs because they are most often noticed by crowds outdoors after dark on Halloween. In fact, they may be seen on any night from mid-October to mid-November. Typical torrid meteor rates are no more than a few per hour, but sometimes, as Mattiazzo observed, one fireball is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the average sizes of these, these meteor
I don't know. Did it
shooting
say?
stars that we see?
Baseballs?
Okay.
I'm guessing. He says, gravel-sized meteoroids.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So even the fireball is like some small,
Probably, yeah.
gravel size thing.
Maybe, yeah.
That's crazy.
Right. It is crazy.
That is really-
So current conditions, solar wind speed 404.8 kilometers per second. Density is 4.6 protons per cubic centimeter.
Yeah, it's been just basically average. Just feeling normal.
It's a very calm day.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's a correlation.
We're determined to find it.
It's there.
Yeah, there is a correlation somehow. So you got any stories? I've got listener communications.
Yeah, I have. Well, let's see, on the meteor
Front.
Halloween meteor. Spooky Halloween asteroid flyby. One of the closest near misses ever seen.
Wow.
This is the Chocholino.com. Don't even know. It's probably total tabloid. There's a BBC News advertisement right on top that makes you think it's BBC News, but it's not.
Okay, it's not.
But I actually read this story also in CNET.com. And it's basically exactly the same. So I don't know where it actually came from. NASA. Even space rocks are supplying jump scares on Halloween, just like your favorite horror flick. A near-Earth asteroid currently identified as COPPEV-1 was spotted in the early morning hours Thursday by the Catalina Sky Survey based in Arizona, and shortly thereafter by New Mexico's Magdalena Ridge Observatory and Arizona's Mount Lemmon Stewart Observatory. According to data from these early observations, the asteroid came closer to the surface of our planet, without actually colliding with our atmosphere, than any other close approach in NASA's database of known near-Earth objects.
Wow.
Simulations show the asteroid passing above southern Africa within 3,852 miles. At the moment of closest approach, around 7:45 a.m. PT, whatever that means. Pacific time, maybe?
Maybe.
To get an idea of how close this is, consider that many telecommunications satellites orbit at an altitude of 22,236 miles.
Yeah.
This is like almost 4,000 miles. Closer than 4,000 miles.
Wow.
Of course, some asteroids come closer and actually impact our planet, like the previously unseen bolide that exploded as it smacked into the atmosphere over Russia in 2013. A much smaller asteroid also collided with the atmosphere last year and burned up, leaving little bits of meteorites that are thought to have fallen over Africa. Just like a Hollywood jump scare, though, this late October asteroid poses no actual threat. It actually already passed us by at a speed of nearly 27,000 miles per hour and is likely only between 2 and 7 meters in diameter. Likely.
Yeah.
Which is too small to do major damage, even if it had impacted. But what we're seeing is these things that are exploding are gravel size. So
Right.
That's why I asked. What's really remarkable about this spooky space rock sighting is that it speaks to how astronomers are getting better at spotting incoming asteroids. It's very possible that we're getting buzzed by cosmic boulders on the regs, and always have been, but we're just now getting a sense of how much traffic is really up there.
Yeah. But I thought they knew 90% of the objects up there.
That's right. Yeah.
And astronomers are getting better at seeing them right before they hit us? Is that what they're saying?
I guess, yeah. Yep, we spotted it.
Yeah.
Right when it flew by. Yes, sir. Let's see. I don't know if let's see what I got here. No. Yeah, I have one other. I have another story. I actually have been bookmarking some stuff on a sound levitation.
Oh, yeah.
So we had a little conversation in the
Snake Force
super
Snake Chat.
secret elite Snake Force chat, and it was about sound levitation. And so I started looking into it, and I what I think is maybe no promises here.
No
but
promises.
I was thinking about doing a presentation like Archer style.
Oh, yeah.
You
That
know,
would be
a small
fantastic.
presentation on this stuff, but it's a fascinating subject. That's what some of the other bookmarks I have right now. But
Oh, okay.
not going to get into it.
All right. Not yet.
Not at this time.
It's not ready yet. Well, let's see. So, okay. We got a lot of great communications about the last show, but the first one I want to read here is one that I missed from August. I don't know how I missed this.
Wow, that's really bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. And it's on episode. The title is Episode 87: Untranslated Whale Mystery Solved. So you remember we read the story about the whale found up in the woods in Brazil or something like that? Yeah. So this is from Chris. And I also interact with Chris on the Grimerica Discord chat. So
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. So he says, obviously the humpback whale that was found upriver on a beach in Brazil was one of the corpses of Zaphod Beeblebrox, cast through time and space to land there by a properly functioning probability drive. So that's a
Sounds like Hitchhiker's Guide to the
it's
Galaxy.
Hitchhiker's Guide reference there. He says, secondly, you must start a Golden Age Problems subreddit. That is so funny.
Yeah.
And he says, I was annoyed by your laughter in the beginning, so I understand when people complain about it. But let me make this clear. Both they and I are assholes. So please keep having fun.
Right on.
Your podcast makes subjects that I have always found a great way to fall asleep into something that might actually be adding to my insomnia, because sometimes I have to stay up to finish a podcast. You guys rock.
Wow. Thanks.
Yeah. So Chris, initially, he was like, he's like, why are you guys laughing all the time? He asked me that in the Discord chat, and I was like, yeah, sorry, we laugh a lot. And then later on, he was like, no, that was dumb. You guys are hilarious. So anyway, I wanted to read this email from him. A Golden Age Problems subreddit.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for missing that. I don't know how I missed that one, man. It's from all the way from August. So, all right.
Well, he's an asshole, so don't worry about it.
All right. He totally admits it.
We are too, man.
Yeah.
It's cool.
We totally are.
That's why we don't care if you get mad that we laugh.
Okay, let's see. I gotta skip forward here because I was way back there looking at that one. Okay, so from David again.
What's up, our buddy Dave?
Our good buddy David. He says, hello, Snake Brothers. Thanks for the kind mention on the show, and I am very glad that you appreciate the pipe tobacco distributor. They do have the best prices.
That's right.
He also says, touche to the point of my delayed follow-up on the Jed drill. That's what I'm calling it for now. The good news amidst my delay is that Brian and I finished our incorporation paperwork, and I'll be in Chicago this weekend on an industrial expo at Navy Pier. Then a week in Iowa full of businessy details. Such an activity leaves scant room for the important things in life, like being a mad scientist at a hardware store. But rest assured, any expectations raised to see revision 1 of the drill either greatly succeed or spectacularly fail will be met in due course. Knowing that others may also be interested in waiting for Jed news certainly motivates me to get going. All the best, David.
Recorded all, video, everything.
That's right. We want a full report.
That's right. That's awesome. Yeah, he's like, he's doing manufacturing, or his buddy does, or...
Yeah, I don't know. He just says they're doing lots of business. Traveling around for business.
Yeah, I'm about to make my second order from Pipes and Cigars.
Yeah.
Fine tobacco.
Fine tobacco.
Almost done with it. Thought it would last me longer. Snake Father.
Yeah, the
he was
snake
like,
stash.
Hey, you got any more of that dark matter? It's like, yeah. In fact, I do. Now I got to order again.
Yeah. So this is from Matthew. He says, don't dox me, bro. At least not the last name. So I didn't. See that? In my previous email, I said pot shards, and now I feel like slightly less of a moron thanks to another brave listener admitting his shared ignorance. I would buy a pot shirt, by the way.
Did you dox him last time, though?
No.
There was somebody that you like.
Yeah, because that guy has his full name on Twitter, so I thought it was okay.
All right.
Yeah, Alex. Yeah. He says, is Zahi at skirptard.com available?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Oh, and by the way, on the emails, I have created some, but I realized what I should do is send an email to that email to let you guys know
Right.
that it's there.
Yes.
So I need to go back and look at the ones that I have created and go ahead and send out something so that you'll get it. You
Yeah.
know.
So you know it's up and working.
Yeah. That'll be the protocol from now on.
Yeah. He also asked for the mailing address because he wants to send us a 1-up box. Maybe send you a humidor? Anyway, he says, thanks and keep up the good work, etc. Matt, Snake Force, Sooner State Chapter.
Yes.
Okay, this is from Logan. He said, it's called Ink and Stone Masonry Shamir Theory. What's up, bros? Just want to say I'm a big fan of the show. Listen to y'all all the time at work. First heard of you guys on Where Did the Road Go, and I'm glad I decided to give you a listen. I live not very far from your location, and I have been to your town several times, including the Natural History Museum you guys have mentioned in previous episodes. Anyways, I saw a video on YouTube a while back about the stone walls of South America and the mysterious melted rocks that they are made of. On that video, there was a link to a research paper done by Dr. Helmut Tripsich on this subject. It blew my mind and seemed to be a plausible explanation to the mystery. I hope you guys take a good look at it and maybe can discuss the paper on an upcoming episode. I know you touched on the stone walls a little bit on the recent episode with Uncharted X. Below is the link to the research paper and a link to the website that goes over the credentials and other papers he's written on and published. Thanks and keep it up. Snakes for life. P.S. If y'all need a substitute watcher, holla at your boy.
Yeah.
And he did send us the link, so we're going to have to check that out, Logan. Thank you.
Is he talking about Sacsayhuaman or?
Yeah, well, and the fact that some of them are vitrified. Yeah. So he's got, somebody has written some papers on it, he says. So I wanted to give a mention to Levi, who sent us a great, fantastic, and very long and detailed email about Google Earth, which we are going to dig into and do more detailed. Probably read more of the email on the show where we do this, but he's got all this great data. I showed this to you.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention, thanks Levi for sending us that, and we are going to dig into it and probably do maybe a segment on it or something at some point. Sab, thanks for the link.
What's up?
Yep, ancientdestructions.com. Says everybody should check it out.
Right on.
Yep. Okay. This is from Michael. He says, bros, I love you guys, but my baby, I think the dog, he means the dog, seems to be not a fan. Please add some ancient dog info. You guys are brilliant. Thank you. And there's a picture of his dog not looking happy that he's listening to Snake Bros.
Oh. Well, listen. Ancient times were rough. There you go.
Oh, that was terrible.
Come on.
Ancient times were rough. Oh, man, that's great.
Unscripted jokes by a couple of CIA double agents undercover.
Daniel says, definitely would like to have some beers with you guys.
Hell yeah,
That
dude.
would be great.
Bring it on.
Yeah. Always for beers.
I need to go grab a beer.
So, Captain. Okay, I think I can say this full name because it's obviously a joke. Captain Trips.
Captain Trips.
Yeah, that was the plague that killed everybody in The Stand,
Oh.
I believe.
Stephen King fan.
Yeah. Says it's titled Snakes, and he says, I just wanted to say thanks, guys. Now my 3 kids end every sentence with snakes and randomly walk out of the room, LOL.
Nice.
But we really love your podcast. Keep up the good work. Snakes. That's great. All his kids are like, snakes, and they just walk out. Just drop the mic.
Break time.
Let's see. Okay, this is a comment on the website from Brandon. It says, hope the baby trees make it okay. Do things I love. Farms, gardens, and wild ideas. Now that I know you're repping both, I like you guys even more. Keep doing what you do. Thanks for the detailed breakdown of so much info, including this latest series on this fascinating sounding book. For example, I didn't know about the crazy boxes at Serapeum until I heard you guys talk about them. Mind blown continually. So yeah, that's all. Loving the old episodes. Cheers, hisses, and rattles from weird old Austin.
Hey.
Hey. Close to us, buddy.
Neighbors.
Yeah. Let's see what we got here. Oh, Gary wanted to say thank you for the video. That was great. That was awesome. Just wanted to say thanks for that. So he took one of our YouTube videos and then he like overlaid himself onto it and basically said, love what you guys are doing. And I wanted to show you how this software works. And he was like, I don't know if this is going to still work, but he uses it to give presentations or something.
Oh, okay.
So he just sent me a short video in the email basically. And It was cool. So
Right
really
on.
appreciate that, Gary. Thanks. Too bad I can't play it on the show.
History Shift will find a way.
Let's see.
He's going to be telling you to send him that email.
Yeah. Okay, this is from Corey. It says, I remember reading a book written entirely on the subject of giants, written by Stephen Quayle. Are you guys familiar with his work? Been years since I read it, but it may be of interest to you. Anyways, love the show. I found you guys 2 weeks ago on Podbean, and I started at the beginning, and I am almost up to date. Holy crap. In 2 weeks? Wow. Thanks, guys. Tons of thought-provoking banter. Thanks, Corey.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
I can't believe you're...
I don't know about that guy. I don't know.
Stephen Quayle. It sounds familiar to me, but I'll have to look it up. Okay. So I don't know how to pronounce this name, but this is from a listener from Slovenia. It says he's from Slovenia. His name is Blaze? Blas? I don't know how to say that.
That's a great name. It's a Z with a line over it.
Right. It's a Z with it's got a little curve over top of it. So I don't know how to say it. Yeah, he says, firstly, I am from the EU, Slovenia, so please forgive me for all the mistakes I will unintentionally incorporate into the following text.
Sounds great so far.
Secondly, keep on excellent job you are doing with your podcast. And then he gives us a whole long, and I read this whole thing on GHB. So he's commenting on our 411 episodes.
Okay.
Okay. So he says he wanted to write David, but he was not sure the message would get to him. He says, I don't mean you are the only one who is making mistakes when talking about GHB, because I heard guys on other podcasts, your colleagues and David himself, talking in the same way about the effects of GHB on the human body. So then basically he goes into a long explanation of what GHB actually does to people. I
don't even know what that is.
It's David. So in the missing 411 stuff, the people that were found drowned in rivers, they were in rivers, but they weren't drowned, or those weird cases.
Yeah.
Sometimes when the coroner did like a serious autopsy, they found traces of GHB in them, and GHB is like a rape drug, basically.
Okay.
You can put it in somebody's drink or whatever, and it knocks them out, right? So he basically is saying it puts you to sleep. So I'm going to see if I can synthesize this. So he says, how does it work in large or normal doses? It puts you to sleep. It is without color, taste. It is easy to slip into someone's drink. That is why it is used for stealing organs or rape, etc. For example, to imagine how fast it works, he says, I used to have it in a fridge. I would take the amount I had prepared and then go to the bathroom before, let's see, if he was on my phone. Okay, so he says if he was sitting on his phone for a minute or two too long, then he would, if he didn't go directly to bed when he started to feel it work, he would wake up like lying on the floor in his hallway. So,
wow.
Yeah. It basically puts you to sleep really fast, and you can't be woken up. That's what he says. So he basically is saying, so the stories about being aware of your surroundings and just not being able to move are not true.
I see.
Right. So in other words, it doesn't paralyze you. It knocks you out, makes you unconscious.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's freaky.
Right. So he
Can't
says,
be woken up.
if a victim is found with a large presence of GHB in his body, it means he fell asleep approximately 5 to 10 minutes after digesting it and never woke from that sleep again. So I hope you find my information useful, and if you have any additional questions, I will be happy to provide you with any answers. Be safe. Cheers. Blaze. Blaze. Sorry for not knowing how to pronounce your name. But thank you. That was a very detailed explanation of this. So that's interesting. It doesn't change well, I guess it could change the missing person stories, except that it just what it means is they weren't awake and aware while whatever was happening was happening.
Yeah, maybe there are certain details in some of the stories where, like, if the person was on the phone, talking to someone, they were lost and whatever.
That means they weren't on.
They didn't have it in their system because 10 minutes afterwards they would have been out.
Right.
So it may change some of the details.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay, so this is from Victor. It is titled, "Your podcast is quite frankly the greatest that has ever been." Wow. It says, okay, so first let's get the pleasantries out of the way. You are responsible for the greatest podcast of all time.
That's awesome.
I started working in the mortgage industry almost 10 years ago, and podcasts became a staple in my life from year one. I started with podcasts like Stuff You Should Know, which is fine, but, well, you know, skirp derps, LOL. I quickly expanded my auditory pursuits into the podcast universe, finding my playlist growing by the hundreds. Since that time, I'm certain I've listened to at least thousands of hours of podcasting content, and I promise yours is far superior to that which I have found thus far. This includes consideration to other shows such as the Higher Sides Chats, which is also really awesome, but somehow not as genuine in its approach. Wow, man.
Thank you. Warm and fuzzies.
Yeah. Let's see. He says, I have found in all these years of listening some content that is sort of obscure. I'd like to share some subjects that might be of interest to you. For example, Google bent light. Let's see. It says Google, quote unquote, bent light. There's a phenomenon where people are capturing photos taken from concave matte metal surface through a half-empty water bottle with sunlight and somehow capturing images from another dimension, showing other beings and forms of life who return stares at the camera. Both are very creepy and intriguing. I've heard you talk a lot about South America, but nothing about the Ica stones from Peru. Yeah, we have done some stuff on the Ica stones. It was way a long time ago, though. Long time ago. Check them out. They're definitely conversation worthy. Look up the Dinospheres. It will blow your serpent brains. And he gives a link. It's a device this guy made that creates acoustical resonances that creates spontaneous healing in the human body and have even been put inside hospital waiting rooms where patients said they felt a relief of their symptoms merely by being in the same room with it and observing it. Wow. I have a lot more information that I've collected through the years, but those were the first that came to mind. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for focusing your will on the expansion of knowledge for all those that seek it. Oh, and snakes! Sincerely, Victor.
Man, thanks so much, buddy.
Yeah.
Wow. But yeah, we did something on the Ica stones. I think we at least did a segment on this.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, because I'm fascinated with the Ica stones for sure. So, and we talked about how they basically railroaded the guy into claiming that he was making them.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did.
It was sort of against the law for him to be selling them.
Right. Yeah. They were like, we're going to throw you in the slammer if you don't claim that you were actually forging these.
Yeah.
Because it's against the law to sell ancient artifacts. So if you're actually selling actual ancient artifacts, you're going to jail. And he was like, nope, I made them all. Of course.
Yeah.
Right. So one more from Henry. Oh, Hablack.
What's up?
He says, it's titled Longheads. He says, hey, Serpent Brothers. Hope you're doing awesome. It's been a minute. Been meaning to hit you up. Just been busy with life. So I have some new prints I'm releasing, and they all have to do with Longheads and Lost Civilizations. And obviously, I wanted to send you guys a set. I think you're really going to dig this stuff.
Oh, man.
Man, that sounds great. They're going up in the cube.
Yes, sir.
Along with your other ones we've got up in here. Serpents and Circles of Life. And he says, also, check this out. I've been traveling for work a lot and was recently in Taos, New Mexico, and randomly bumped into someone with one of your shirts on. Small world. Yeah, that was Birch. Dang it. Because he wrote us an email like, dude, I was in a bar in Taos and I ran into somebody who knew your podcast. And I was wearing one of your shirts. And we hung out and it was great.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's so good. He says, also, I wanted to say your recent episode with David Matheson was so good. That dude is on to something. I just got one of his books and haven't had a chance to read too much, but from what I have, it is going to be mind-blowing. These initiate priests from various cultures have definitely been keeping these star myths alive. It's just so interesting to think about how far this stuff goes back. The other thing I find really interesting is these people's knowledge of altered states of consciousness and the potential of this being another lost technology. Our own government studies astral projection and remote viewing, so thinking about cultures that were doing this stuff for thousands of years is wild. We only use like 10% of our brain, so imagine what a longhead in a trance state in a culture that nourished this stuff for centuries could accomplish.
Wow, that's, yeah.
Yeah, those are really good points. Okay, so he says, a couple of questions for you. I live in Philly. I actually grew up in Cherry Hill. I think I heard you guys talking about spending time there.
Yeah.
Yep. Our grandpa was from Cherry Hill. He says, anyways, I was wondering if there are any sites near Philly, anywhere in eastern Pennsylvania or south central Jersey worth checking out, specifically dolmens or other ancient formations. Thought you guys might have a line on that. I know you did an episode on Vermont, but that's kind of far for me. Isn't, eastern PA. PA is Pennsylvania, isn't it? Isn't that PA?
Yeah.
Right? Well, isn't the Ringing Rocks Park in Pennsylvania?
I think so.
Yeah. So yeah, if that's where I think it is, you should check that one out, Ringing Rocks Park. I'm convinced that that's actually the rubble of an ancient structure. It's geologically unexplainable. The rocks are all ringing and they're kind of like block sized and they're up on the side of the valley instead of down in the bottom where they should be if they were deposited by glaciers. So you should check that one out, Henry, if you haven't gone to Ringing Rocks. And also, Serpent Mound isn't too far from, right? It's in Ohio. So maybe it's a little far, but worth the trip.
No. Not looking at a map.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. We don't have a map in here. We should.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
We need Brad.
Right. Brad is the map guy. Also, so moving on here with the email from Henry. He says, also wondering if you've had a chance to check out Matthew LaCroix, his work. I heard someone mention to you on a recent podcast, and I've listened to his stuff, and it is definitely very interesting, but then I read something he wrote, and it wasn't heavily cited, so I didn't really know what to think. Also, what are you guys listening to as far as podcasts/YouTube channels go? The Uncharted X interview was awesome. That dude's stuff rules. Have you listened to Greg Carwood? He's got one called The Higher Side Chats. Really interesting topics, and he gets great guests. Laird Scranton and Gordon White have been on a bunch. I think you guys would dig it. Thanks for taking the time. As always, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And then he sends a picture of him with Birch wearing shirt in Taos.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, man, that's so great.
Yeah, I actually, I have the Higher Side Chats.
So do I.
On my feed, but I haven't listened to it. And lately, I've literally found very little time to listen to anything, which is unusual. Like normally, I can listen to stuff all day while I'm at work. And on the drive to and from work, which is 45 minutes to an hour, depending on if I have to stop. But lately I've been so busy. It's like lots of phone calls, and then my brain is constantly going. I'm having to think about a lot of stuff that's coming up and planning and
work and music. So.
Yeah, just all kinds of stuff. So I don't know. Like normally, we're on part 3 of this, Christopher Dunn book. And usually when Russ is doing like a deep dive into some book report, like we'll talk about it between shows and I'll kind of figure out where he's going with it or what he's focusing on. And then I'll do a little background research on other things outside the book, that might be pertinent information about the stuff that he's going to be talking about in the book. I haven't done any of that.
Busy.
Yeah. I have been listening, I'm listening to the
Greek mythology.
Yeah, Greek mythology audiobook that I can't remember what his name was, but recommended it.
Yes,
sent us an email with
links to it.
the links. That's been great, but it's just been little snippets here and there. So, but yeah. In other words, I need to listen to the Higher Side Chats.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, I have them and I have listened to a few, but I haven't listened to a bunch.
I realized that the name of it recently, and I can't remember how I learned this, but the name of it is the takeoff of the Fireside Chats.
I think so, yeah.
I guess it was FDR did the Fireside Chats. Well, listen, country, this is where we stand as a nation.
Right.
Genius idea.
Yeah, it is. And it's also because
great name.
They smoke weed.
Oh, okay. Elect me again for a 4th time. It'll be fine.
Okay. I know we got to take a break here, but a couple more things. I want to just... some people only talk to us on Twitter. So I wanted to say just a general thank you to Adam, Laser Printer Jam, Shank. Dude, your stuff is great. Thank you for sending us links to papers and other pertinent information, especially on the Anzic skeletons. That was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to, I read emails, but I don't read Twitter stuff on the show. So I just wanted to say thank you to those guys. And there's other ones that I'm not remembering right now. I will get you guys' names in there. But all the people that communicate to us on Twitter, thank you so much. And one more to Anonymous. We are not alchemists, but we are fascinated with alchemy. So you know who you are.
We are making wine, though.
We are, yeah.
We're turning juice into booze, ladies and gentlemen. And it tastes great.
That's right.
Now. I've had quite a few glasses tonight, in fact.
That's true. That's true.
We were working that event, and it was getting near the end. I was like, all right, time.
Time to slam some wine.
Time to drink wine.
All right.
So we'll take a break.
Time for a break.
We'll be back. Sit tight. And we're back. Brothers of the Serpent podcast in the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, as always.
As always.
Unless we are seeking pyramids from afar.
Which we will be doing. Soon.
Very soon.
Very soon.
Are we jumping into it? What else? You had something else?
One more real quick thing. Ryan, the Watcher, sent us your comments from the Brothers of the Serpent on the Facebook page. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So much for that. That was really awesome. So just wanted to say thank you so much for that, buddy.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Almost cried.
Yeah, it was very, very awesome.
Like that was the exact reaction I would dream about someone having.
Yeah.
Listening to the podcast and the music.
Yes.
Like that was really, really cool. And I can't wait for the new album to come out.
Yeah.
Which we're really shooting for the spring equinox for the $50 Dynasty album titled Procession to come out. But, we never know.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. We're every weekend we're hard at it. So,
yep. Which is another reason why Kyle doesn't have time to listen to a lot of stuff these days.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that, we're doing Cosmographia too, and
Yeah.
there's editing involved in that. So I've been spending a lot of time in the studio, after work and things like that, doing editing and then working on the album. And it's all been great.
It's all great.
Really great.
Just very busy.
I just can't wait for you to hear this album, dude.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot. Really,
Yes.
really means a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so back to Chris Dunn's Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. If you guys haven't gotten this book yet by this episode, something's wrong with you. Just saying. Okay? I'm very lucky that there happens to be 3 intros to this this book, right? So on the first episode we did, I read one forward, which is from one guy who was an engineer, and then the second episode we did last week, I read another forward which was from an attorney turned manufacturer who is Chris Dunn's boss or the CEO of the Danville Stamping Company.
Yeah.
And now I have the actual introduction written by Mr. Dunn himself, which I can read for this show. Okay?
Yes.
So,
It was meant to be.
yes, introduction. And he starts it with a quote here. So it's, "Tell me, Mr. Hoover, what are your interests?" "Madame, I am an engineer." "Oh, really? I took you for a gentleman." Herbert Hoover, conversation on making the acquaintance of a lady on a steamship. I took you for a gentleman. Obviously, engineers are not gentlemen, right?
Sharp lady.
Yeah. So, Dunn says, it is possible that Mr. Hoover's confused lady acquaintance had the wrong impression of what an engineer does, since a train driver is also known as an engineer. There are mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, materials engineers, computer engineers, construction engineers, quality engineers, and safety engineers.
Audio engineers.
Oh, yeah. And all may not be considered gentlemen.
Also true.
Many you may meet will be ladies. Each engineer works in a specialized field, and within those particular disciplines are subgroups that work in myriad industries that form the fabric and backbone of modern civilization. Of themselves and their machines, the life of an engineer is frequently punctuated with Scotty's Star Trek lament, "Can't take much more of this, Captain." Perhaps unbeknownst to you, the engineer's labors have a direct effect on your daily life. For instance, you have just arrived in the office, hung up your coat, poured yourself a cup of your favorite morning beverage. An army of engineers and artisans worked to create the technology that has allowed your morning ritual to happen. Crafted into the car, train, or bus, and the elevator that carried you to your destination are the labors of the modern artisan. At some location miles away, perhaps on another continent, the skillful eye and hands of artisans guided the tools that created the coffee maker and processed the coffee. The Industrial Revolution of the 1800s propelled Western civilization forward in terms of labor-saving devices. Around this time, many of the machines that are now used in manufacturing were either invented or improved. Yet the most basic of machines, the lathe, has been around in one form or another for centuries, originally in the form of a potter's wheel. Its development as an efficient metal-cutting machine grew from the invention of the steam engine, which powered everything from textile mills to Stephenson's rocket, the first steam locomotive to convert linear motion to rotary motion, and use that rotary motion to propel itself along two rails at the dizzying speed of 25 miles per hour. In the past 60 years, technology has advanced rapidly in directions that many people, except science fiction writers and futurists, could not even have imagined possible. Discoveries and innovations in the field of physics have introduced new patterns of thought in the minds of scientists and inventors, like legs on a centipede. Branches of science, engineering, and manufacturing, along with the creative genius of gifted artists who are now an essential part of the design of functional products, move forward independently and in unison, each drawing on the other for inspiration and survival. 300 years before the Industrial Revolution was in full swing, geniuses arose among their peers and made their mark, adding to the prosperity and understanding of future generations. The genius of Leonardo da Vinci, Copernicus, and Galileo is well known. During this period, mathematicians, astronomers, and philosophers laid the groundwork for the pursuit of scientific inquiry and changing the worldview of humanity and its place in the universe. With its genesis in the 1500s, what is now known as the Scientific Revolution fought against the church and superstitious beliefs to create the foundation of modern science. The heliocentric theory of Nicholas Copernicus shattered many beliefs of the Earth's preeminence in the universe, and the Catholic Church, which opposed such heresy, fought tooth and nail to stop the rush of intellect that ultimately reshaped our beliefs about nature and ourselves. René Descartes, a devout Catholic himself, cut through the confusion that had reigned for so long with a remarkably simple philosophy that to us is a part of life, but in his day was counter to the philosophy of the Church, for it would ultimately challenge the Church's own philosophy and teachings. In Discourse on the Method of Rightly Conducting the Reason and Seeking for Truth in the Sciences, Descartes sets forth three guidelines that he followed in his own work. The first of these was to accept nothing as true, which I did not clearly recognize to be so. So this is Descartes now. That is to say, carefully to avoid precipitation in prejudice in judgments, and to accept in them nothing more than what was presented to my mind so clearly and distinctly that I could have no occasion to doubt it. The second was to divide up each of the difficulties which I examined into as many parts as possible, and as seemed requisite in order that it might be resolved in the best manner possible. The third was to carry on my reflections in due order, commencing with objects that were the most simple and easy to understand, in order to rise, little by little, or by degrees, to knowledge of the most complex, assuming an order, even if a fictitious one, among those which do not follow a natural sequence relatively to one another. So, from the birth of the scientific revolution to the industrial revolution, the knowledge of the world has advanced at a rapid pace. Up until today, this advancement has spanned 500 years. Within that time, we have gone from an agrarian society with a much-lauded, simple pastoral existence to a complex industrial society with products that were undreamed of when the creator of the world's first successful locomotive, Robert Stephenson, cried out, "Full steam ahead!" Punctuating each stage of civilization's development are major building projects that, by necessity or demand, incorporate the state-of-the-art building construction of their period. The landscape of the ancient world is dotted with fabulous structures that are breathtaking in their complexity. The Egyptians and Mayans had their pyramids and temples. The Hindus crafted elaborate temples throughout Asia. The Greeks built the Parthenon, and the Babylonians constructed the Jupiter Temple and the fabled Hanging Gardens. The Romans made their mark all over the world with engineering geniuses guiding the construction of their famous roads, the Colosseum, and numerous temples and viaducts, while Roman sculptors guided their chisels over marble, and alabaster, giving it physical presence and beauty. With the exception of artifacts such as the mysterious Antikythera mechanism, an astronomical computer found by fishermen on the seafloor near the island of Antikythera in 1901, the development of technology in the ancient world seems to have clear origins and is fairly well understood. Going back yet further in time, another deep mystery lies in the question of how the ancient Egyptian civilization could have lasted for 3,000 years without improving the tools used to quarry and shape stone to near perfection. Since 1984, when Analog Magazine published my article, Advanced Machining in Ancient Egypt, controversy on this subject has persisted. The article proposed that the ancient Egyptians were more advanced than previously believed, and that they used advanced tools and methods to cut granite, diorite, and other difficult-to-work stone. It does not seem credible that brilliant architects and engineers would continue to use stone tools and copper chisels for 3,000 years.
Yeah.
Following this article, I have received input from many kind people from different walks of life. Though much of the feedback I have received has been extremely positive and supportive of the idea that ancient cultures were more advanced than classical archaeology has supposed, there has been some criticism from those who believe that I went too far with my conclusions because I made the mistake of imposing a modern engineer's viewpoint on an ancient civilization, thereby ignoring its cultural origins and disrespecting the Egyptians' heritage. In fact, quite the opposite is true. Anyone who suggests that the ancient Egyptians were more advanced actually shows more, not less, deference and respect to their civilization. Such a statement does not diminish their culture in any way. Rather, such a suggestion would elevate the Egyptian status in the world. The cultural assumptions that are disturbed by the idea of an advanced Egyptian race in prehistory lie in the libraries and halls of Western countries and the belief system that has been generated by generations of Western scholars, beginning with Herodotus. It is our own culture's chauvinistic view of Egypt that threads throughout our history books. Studies made by archaeologists, historians, and Egyptologists over the past 500 years have essentially provided us with the modern conventional view of ancient Egypt. This is an area of intense interest to engineers such as myself who find in Egypt a language with which we are familiar. Remember this? Gantenbrink saying the same thing?
Yeah.
When he's walking across over the Giza Plateau and he's like, I recognize this stuff.
Yeah.
I felt at home with these people that built these objects. Right? This is the language of science, engineering, and manufacturing. Our counterparts in that ancient land left future generations of scientists, engineers, architects, and those who take their instructions and shape materials to their specifications with a difficult challenge. This challenge is to recognize what they created and provide evidence-based, reasonable answers that give the ancient engineers credit for what they achieved. With their works, ancient engineers perhaps unwittingly created a sort of mecca for modern engineers and technologists. The engineers and technologists that have taken this pilgrimage have discussed many theories, but always at the end we come up short of confidence that the theories are actual truth. The ancient Egyptians who built the pyramids and temples, who crafted monumental statues out of igneous rock, were thinking with the minds of architects, engineers, and craftspeople. Were ancient archaeologists responsible for the legacy they left us? Without the advance of modern Egyptian architects, engineers, and craftspeople, are today's Egyptian archaeologists missing something? Are modern interpretations of the awesome feats of the ancient Egyptians irrelevant in providing new and powerful information about this ancient culture are the thoughts and conclusion of Western writers and travelers who stood in front of the Great Pyramid 100 years ago, or some 4,500 years after it was built, more intrinsically linked to the ancient Egyptian mind than those who come after them a century or more later? What can be described as a modern perspective? In his time, Herodotus would surely have been considered modern. So were Egyptophiles, Petrie, Marriott, Champollion, and Howard Carter each in possession of a modern mind that was clothed in a fabric of prejudices and stereotypes that existed within their own culture? When it comes to completely understanding the ancient Egyptians' level of technological prowess, there can be no final conclusion. What is left to study today is a mere skeleton of what existed at the time of the ancient Egyptians. This skeleton survives as highly sophisticated and precisely crafted sedimentary and igneous rock. It is my belief that the clothes we have placed on this skeleton are mere rags compared to what should be there. I have proposed in the past that higher levels of technology were used by the ancient Egyptians, but you will find in this book that I have rejected some ideas and cast doubt on all my previous assertions as to the level of technology they enjoyed. At the same time, I cast doubt on the methods of manufacture that Egyptologists have asserted were used to build the pyramids and the glorious temples in Egypt. These methods are primitive and include stone and wooden mallets, copper chisels, tube drills and saws, and stone hammers for quarrying, dressing, and sculpting hard igneous rock. Nobody can claim that they know what was in the minds of the ancient Egyptians. All we have are their works, and by their works ye shall know them. This book is about the Egyptians' works, but before understanding the manufacturing and building methods, it is necessary to understand the full scope of each work, exactly what it is we are studying. In the following pages, I present another view of ancient Egyptian artifacts, the view of a modern craftsman and engineer made possible through the use and knowledge of modern technology. After I describe each work, we will examine the methods of construction that have been proposed by Egyptologists and discuss some of the arguments against and for considering other methods that are more advanced. It is my sincere wish that the artifacts are respected and understood for what they are. They are priceless treasures and would have astronomical value if produced today using modern tools. Because they are encoded with this knowledge of life on this planet in prehistory and hold a powerful message for future generations, their worth in monetary terms is unfathomable. Their value in raising awareness and dispelling cultural bias, even while short of real answers, cannot be calculated in monetary terms.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So that's Dunn's own intro to his book.
Yeah, I love it. That's a good point that he's making, though, about the modern, the idea of the modern interpretation or whatever. All these people throughout history that this entire model is built on.
Yeah.
Each one of them at the time
Was modern. Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So why, I don't know. That's good. And
Okay.
it's weird. It's weird too. I mean, I guess it's not weird, but I don't know. It's sophistry, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
That the Egyptologists or the archaeologists would say, "Oh, well, your version of ideas or whatever is skewed because you're looking at it through the modern lens of manufacturing and it doesn't
Right.
work." And it's like, come on. You obviously don't understand engineering.
Right. That's right. So in the part of the book that we're going to go through tonight on this podcast, he is mostly in the temples of Hathor. So he's in Dendera. So we're going to be starting with chapter 7, The Shadows of Dendera. So I wanted to kind of go over some of the things that we talked about on the last one and maybe explain them a little more clearly. So in a lot of cases, he's trying to look at stuff, like we said, that are 45, 50, 60, 70 feet above him, right? Because like when you look at pictures of these temples, the people are these little dots down at the bottom of these enormous columns, you know?
Yeah.
So when you see the scope, the size of these things, we are being watched. The watcher is here. Great. Well, we're just finishing up this second segment. That was actually a really long intro, so, right? And aren't we close to time?
Oh, really? Already?
I think so.
Oh, time's flying by.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Yeah.
Fastest 2 hours in podcasting. ladies
That's
and
right.
gentlemen.
Fastest 2 hours in podcasting. Yeah, so I wanted to just try to make a couple of things clear before we dive back into the book. So, first of all, Kyle asked about how he was getting photographs of these things, and I described how he was getting the 3/4 profile, right? So he would set the camera up to where the tip of the nose appears to just be touching the edge of the line of the face, but he also, of course, got full directly in front of them as well, and completely to the side profile pictures.
Right.
I was just describing one way he did it, like where he describes in the book, like he takes great care to say, like, so see how I got this picture where the tip of the nose appears to be just touching the edge of the face.
Right.
But he also was like making pains, like you said, to like get the center of the column, because the face is at the top of the column or whatever. So he's like center of the column, and he backs his camera up on that, and then he has to tilt it back however much, and then he's taking a picture. And so the face is obviously, you're looking at it from below.
Yeah.
And then he would go all the way around and find a place to put his camera where he could get it from the side. And in some of the cases in the Temple of Hathor, and these are the faces of Hathor, a lot of times are defaced.
Yeah.
Right. So he is having trouble with that. But he manages to find one where whoever was doing all the defacing missed it. It's like way off in the corner somewhere, and face is not messed up. So he manages to get images of it. But these columns are interesting because there's a face on each side, right? So rather than it being a statue, the column itself is this beautiful sculpture of abstract, but at the top it kind of has this plant-like aspect.
Yeah.
It'll be like a lotus flower sort of thing going on. And then above that are these 4 faces of Hathor on this,
Wow.
Yeah.
Got to see these things.
Yeah. So he did took a lot of pictures from directly in front of it, directly to the side of the faces, and also doing this with the Ramses faces, and then getting the 3/4 profile. And then he was able to put all those images in his image. He uses software where he talks about in engineering, they actually can do image, I don't know what you call it, analysis, where you can come up with the shape of the object by using images taken from specific areas.
Right. That's what I was thinking too, and you would have to have very specific measurements,
Right.
and know the angle
Yeah.
that you're looking up or whatever.
Yeah. I also wanted to point out that he talks a lot about how when he first got into manufacturing, what it's like, and then as opposed to what it's like now, right? So he says he's been in manufacturing for 50 years. So when he was talking about the bowling pin hats, the head jet crowns, how it's because it's curved in more than one, right? You can't turn it on a lathe because unlike a bowling pin, which you could make on a lathe, this thing is also curved in another dimension.
Right. Like melt a bowling pin and sort of
Right. Let it slump a little bit. Yeah. He says if this object had been given to him to create 50 years ago, they would have used a machine that uses a stylus, right? So you build a model, right? So you build a model out of wood because wood is sort of easy for you to shape, right? And then you would have that model sitting in and there are machines that did this, but the model would sit somewhere where there's a stylus, and that stylus would trace it, and then that tracing would be copied on the metal or the stone over on another part, right? That's how they would do it back then, before they had computer-assisted design.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. Like you have this little stylus and it's going around and tracing the points, and then
it's making the exact same motion as the actual cutting tool.
Right. The cutting tool is guided by the stylus running along the outside of the. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he talks about that. Like we would have had to make this object using a stylus. Now, today we can model it in 3D and then feed that to the computer, and then it can just build it.
Right.
Right.
Can you imagine making a 45-foot tall model out of wood?
Out of wood. Here are the cedars of Lebanon.
And you know what would happen is trying to build something that large out of wood would be just as complicated as trying to cut it out. I mean, because you wouldn't be able to get it. Like in order to get it as precise in stone, building it out of something that large out of wood, the wood would be moving all the time.
Right. You'd have to build it really fast and get it done really quick because the wood is like flexing and changing.
Yeah.
I mean, just from like morning to night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Over the time of day, like
really
the wood's
hard.
flexing and exactly. So the fact that they have that speaks to the idea of them having quote unquote computer assisted design, right? in a way, because not only did they make one statue that way, but there's like 4 of them or like 8 of them or multiple ones across, like he says, from north to south of Egypt across hundreds of miles that are all exactly the same.
That's insane.
So if your wood model is flexing all the time, they should have errors, you know. And he does find errors, and I think we'll go through some of that in here. But one of the errors I was talking about before was having to do with the mouth.
Yeah.
And how they used a separate tool or machine to cut the mouth, and then there was an error made at some point, and then they cut the mouth again, which means they cut it a little deeper to correct that error, and that left this real sharp line around the outside edges of the mouth.
Right.
And he was able to see tool marks there. And the other thing I wanted to say was he calls those witness marks. They're witness. That was his word for tool marks. They are witness to the type of tool being used.
I see.
Right?
That's cool.
Yeah. So I took that to be like an engineering term. These are witness marks, right? So let's see. What else did I want to go through? I think that's it. Oh, yeah. One other thing that I wanted to kind of make clear again, how I was talking about, you know, you have these abstract shapes around something, like I was describing the key on the keyboard. Like you've got this giant sphere. And like Kyle said, that giant sphere doesn't exist anywhere. It's just that to describe the little indent on the key, you can use a giant sphere to describe it. It's a piece of the bottom of that giant sphere, basically.
Right.
But like Kyle said, that sphere doesn't exist anywhere on the tools or anything like that. But so like Chris Dunn does a lot of things where he's showing you a photograph and he's drawing circles on stuff, you know, or squares or lines or whatever. And those lines aren't real. They're not really anywhere in the manufacturing of the object or in the object itself or in any of the tools. But because you can draw this giant circle where one little piece of the edge of that circle describes some line on the face, that's showing you the conceptualizing of the design.
Right. And what makes it amazing is that you can take a circle with the same diameter as that one, that a tiny piece of that circle describes the eyebrow.
Yeah.
You can take the same diameter circle and move it around on the face and find that same curve matches all kinds of other features of the face.
That's
too,
right. Yeah.
in various different lengths of the
That's right.
of the circumference of the circle.
Yeah.
And it's mind blowing. And
yeah.
there's like, you know, you get one diameter, and then you can find another curve that's like tighter, and it's a smaller circle, and then you take that small circle and move it around on the face, and you'll find a whole bunch more of those.
Exactly. Exactly. So those circles aren't real things. They weren't involved in tools or anything like that, but they are conceptual in the design. So somebody was using the same diameter circle to get those little curves that are all over the design of the face.
Right.
That's the point where I was trying to make, and that Kyle was trying to help me make, that I didn't quite get across last time. So,
and that is sort of it's one of those witness things too, because you could say, even though the circle doesn't exist, it may be the actual radius of an arm or a tool.
It could, yes, you're right.
You know, on one of the axes or whatever of some
right. Yeah.
rotating.
So you have your cutting tip at the very end of a long arm, and the radius of the rotation of that arm may be that circle. And then you pull the tool, you change it out, and then you have a shorter arm, and then that's why you've got a whole bunch of smaller circles all over the place.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So that you could be right on that too. It could actually, those circles could exist somewhere, but the point is that because you can find them, you can draw lines and circles all over these statues, and the fact that there's only 3 circles that define almost every freaking curve on on the face is telling you something.
From all 3 axes
right. Yeah.
of the 3-dimensional object. That's just crazy.
Right. Yep. Okay.
Fantastic stuff.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a break, and we'll come back for the second half of the show.
Snakes.
Oh, there it goes. I was going to say, why is it just a white block?
Zoomed in.
Here there be dragons, ladies and gentlemen, on the Brothers of the Serpent podcast. And we have been joined by our good friend and longhead, Mr. Brett England, the Watcher, from deep beneath his secret space station in secret outer space, where he has finally climbed out of his bag of chips.
The classic space sleeping bag.
Fantastic. Now, every time I hear dragons for the rest of my life, I'm going to think of Mr. Randall Carlson saying,
Yeah.
and you know what Draco is, right?
Right.
Oh, my God.
The fire-breathing dragon.
That's right.
That's right.
Glad to have you, Watcher.
Yeah. Glad you're here.
Glad to be here. All right.
All right. Let's killed microphone. Okay. Shadows of Dendera. So Dunn says visitors to the temples in Upper Egypt are greeted with structures that have been severely weathered and damaged over the millennia. The floor and bases of the columns are rough and show where repairs have been made to broken areas. The capitals of the columns have been intentionally and systematically defaced. Of the 96 faces of Hathor that grace the top of the columns, not one has escaped the vandalism of ancient fury. John Anthony West, an erudite scholar who personifies Euripides' statement, "The tongue is mightier than the blade," offered an interesting perspective on the destruction of statuary in Egypt. At the Temple of Philae, he pointed out that it was almost as though the statue or relief, in the case of Philae, was being decommissioned. It was not the work of vandals because the defacement was dutifully and skillfully carried out with carefully placed chisel marks. The pylon at the Temple of Philae, the ancient Egyptians believed that the statues contained the power of those they represented, and that through their noses, the statues breathed the essence of the deity, their life force. By cutting off the nose, they cut off the life breath of the statue, and it ceased to hold power over the people. My own impression of Dendera was that the destruction of Hathor's faces followed a significant catastrophic event that brought death and destruction to the Egyptians. Hathor was worshipped as the goddess of drunkenness and sex, but she was also known as the goddess of destruction, who, upon the bidding of Ra, brought hardship and pain. Perhaps the survivors decommissioned or defaced the faces of Hathor because of a mind-consuming terror that she would bring more death and destruction.
Yeah, it just sounds like, later cultures that came along and named them, and I don't know. Doesn't sound like the creators.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, if the temples were
knows?
there for hundreds of years, could it be later people's?
yeah.
But it is interesting.
It sounds like superstition.
Yeah.
In other words,
Yeah, it does.
from people who didn't really
Right.
understand it. Or it's like you can imagine some maniacal ruler, trying to create some to gain power over people by mind control in some way.
Yeah.
And like scaring them into submission, and then eventually some revolution, and
Yeah.
they destroy them.
Yeah. It is weird.
Copper chisels,
Yeah.
and stone hammers.
It is weird how the defacement is so specific, though, in a lot of the pictures. Like we have all those pictures from Uncle Tom who went,
Yeah.
right? And like you see these beautiful relief carvings, and just one of the figures on the relief carving will be perfectly chiseled out, and it's only the skin part, right? Wherever their clothes are is left alone. It's really strange.
Like the way they go in and deface it or whatever.
Yeah, so there's a relief, a high relief, and it's a person who's standing, right? So it's a full body relief carving of somebody standing up, and somebody has come in there and put pock marks all over anywhere the standing person has exposed skin, but their clothes are not defaced. It's very strange. Now, in some cases, everything inside the outline of the body has been completely erased with very regular looking chisel marks, but in other cases, it's just exposed skin Sometimes it's just the face.
It's almost like I'm thinking of my
A watcher. It says they've been partying too long. They're like, we can't take any more drunkenness and sex. They had to erase Hathor.
yeah. But I was thinking that from memory here of those images where they like the quote unquote defacing was very regular.
Yeah.
And it was like a mason did it.
Yeah.
Almost. Right.
Right.
All these little chisel marks side by
They're
side.
very
all the-
regular. Yeah.
Seems like something you would do to a surface you were about to plaster.
Could be. Yeah. Like they were going to.
Or maybe they did plaster over it.
And
Like
the plaster
they're
fell
like,
off.
okay, we're gonna change this to this other person, and so we've got to make it rough so
Yeah.
that we can get our plaster to stick
Oh,
onto
that's a good
it.
point.
You know, you always have to roughen up a surface anytime you're gonna,
Yeah. Apply something.
Apply.
Paint or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they put the plaster on,
And then
repainted it or whatever, and then that all fell off.
Oh, that's
and
a great
then,
point.
So what we see is this redacted.
Yeah.
looking thing.
Redacted. That's what we called it. That's right. Redacted.
But that doesn't explain the noses being knocked off these statues.
Statues. Right. Yeah. Yeah. In a lot of cases, you just see that the nose is just gone. Like the Sphinx,
Yeah.
his nose is gone.
Yeah.
Her nose.
Maybe there's something more to that, like that the essence of the thing was quote unquote breathed in through the nose. Maybe the nose was a known place where something was hidden. Like
Could
they
be.
have these altar stones in these, cathedrals, and they core out this piece underneath the altar stone, and they put some relic.
Oh, yeah.
In the Catholic Church, they put some relic or something in that altar stone and then seal it up.
Yeah.
So it's known that in every Catholic church or whatever
Cathedral,
there's an altar stone and there's some relic in there. So
So
if you were relic hunting
Yeah.
in some future age where these churches were abandoned or whatever, you might go around and break all the altar stones
Yeah.
and not really do anything else to anything else. You're just looking for the things that are hidden in these stones, which there's maybe a legend that something's hidden there.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe they were knocking noses off and trying to, because this is actually where certain things were hidden.
Hidden. Yeah. That's a great point. Both of those are good points. That they may have been replastering and that plaster is, because that is known to happen.
And the Watcher's pointing out that in mummification rituals, they took hooks through the nose to scramble and remove the brain matter as well.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting point.
Yeah. And there's that strange ritual called the opening of the mouth that's
Yeah.
still kind of not understood.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. So at this point, he's pointing to a statue. He's talking about a statue here, and the point of this section is that he's pointing out that there's a mistake in the statue. Okay, so he says the undercut on the statue is 0.078 inches or 1.98 millimeters deep, and comparing it to a 1/32nd inch radius gauge, it has a 0.0355 inch radius. So he says it was obviously a mistake made in contouring the statue, but it is a mistake that speaks volumes when we try to determine how the ancient Egyptians cut their statues. An ancient craftsperson would have had to invest a considerable amount of time and painstaking effort to create such a feature by hand.
Wait a second. What?
Yeah, so the numbers are confusing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go back. He has an 1/8 inch radius gauge or
Yeah.
diameter?
Well, basically just ignore the numbers. What he's saying here is there is a mistake in the statue that is deep enough to have been really hard to make by hand, by accident.
I gotcha.
Okay.
But I want to know the numbers.
Okay. The undercut on the statue is 0.078 inches deep. And comparing it to a 1/32nd inch radius gauge, it has a 0.0355 inch radius. Okay. So those are his numbers.
Okay.
And then he says it is obviously a mistake made in contouring the statue. But it is a mistake that speaks volumes when we try to determine how the ancient Egyptians cut their statues. An ancient craftsperson would have had to invest a considerable amount of time and painstaking effort to create such a feature by hand. It could not be created suddenly by the slip of a stone or copper or bone or wood tool, the cutting materials cited in the archaeological record.
Right.
These kinds of mistakes are not made intentionally, but are made unwittingly and suddenly in a way that causes some anguish if the mistake cannot be accepted by the customer. Customer being the temple, I guess.
Or the pharaoh. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
the pharaoh. On a statue, though, it is doubtful that, unless pointed out, anyone would notice this mistake. So the whole point of me marking that section was just because what he's saying is like, here's this hidden feature, and it's, if I remember correctly, it's part of the mouth.
Okay.
And it's the undercut of the upper lip, right? So when you're looking up, you can see the upper lip over the lower lip.
Right.
And there's this incredibly deep, it goes too deep. The line goes too deep back here.
Oh, too deep back in the corner
In the very
of the
corner
mouth.
of the mouth, yeah. And he's just saying, like, you can't, if you're doing all this by hand, you can't make that mistake.
Yeah. How do you get a cut that sharp and deep?
Right.
So he's saying, yeah, watch this thing.
0.781 equals
5/64ths of an inch.
Yeah, so this is on a granite statue. You got to keep that in mind. Yeah. Okay.
But it's a sharp cut. I mean, he was using a tiny radius
Yeah.
tool.
5. Yeah. Yeah, it was a 1/32 inch radius gauge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he says, when we view the capitals of Hathor from the ground with the naked eye, the capitals being the tops of the that's the name for the thing at the top of the column.
Okay.
It's called the capital, right? So you have a column, and then the top of the column is basically squared off, and then there's some block that's carved out on top of that. That's called the capital. It's
Okay.
the upper part of the column there. When we view the capitals of Hathor from the ground with the naked eye, we fail to see the methods used to craft and assemble them. Close-up photographs, however, reveal that they were made out of more than one block and skillfully and exactly assembled with joints that are hardly detectable. The design of the capital shown in figure 7.9 is typical of all those I examined. And then he says figure 7.10 prompts some intriguing speculation about their manufacture. Were they crafted before being assembled, or were the blocks stacked up in the manner suggested by Egyptologists and then crafted in situ? Okay, so in other words, as he's doing this, so this part, he's in the temple, and this is one of the ones where he had to arrange to be in the temple all day instead of going with one of the tours, because the tours, he says they're rushing people through all the time, and he's like, no, I got to be there all day. So he manages to get permission to be at this temple for like 6 hours. And as he's there setting up his camera and figuring out what he wants to take pictures of and how he's going to do it, there are tours going by him nonstop. And he would hear, so the tour guide comes in and they all stop, and the tour guide points up there and then tells people how it was done according to the standard Egyptological model.
Yeah.
And then rushes everybody out. And so he hears this over and over again. And what they're saying is they stacked up all the blocks and then used ramps and whatever, or scaffolding or whatever, and get them up there and then carved them from the top down by hand after stacking them up as blocks.
Yeah.
So he's questioning this, right? He says, were they crafted before being assembled? In other words, were they carved first and then put up there?
Yeah.
Or were the blocks stacked up in the manner suggested by Egyptologists and then crafted in situ, in place? It would seem that for purposes of quality control, a scheme whereby the stones are cut before being assembled would allow for greater precision, for it is quite obvious from the photographs that the split lines between the blocks necessitated exact surfaces in order for them to fit without a gap between them. In terms of difficulty, it would be hard to argue for one method over another. Either way, there are huge hurdles to overcome in replicating this ancient miracle. This fact becomes more relevant when we expand our analysis to that of the columns' relationships to each other. Right? So he starts looking at the columns' relationships to each other and measuring everything, and there's also all kinds of precision involved in that. And we're talking about, again, enormous columns. I mean, they're gigantic, right? They're I can't remember the measurements he gives, but you can see pictures of it. You see people standing, and they're all little ants at the very bottom, and the columns are these gigantic things.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you look at the tops of the capitals of the columns where the faces of Hathor are, they're 60, 45, 50, 60 feet up there. And in some cases he finds, I don't remember if I marked this or not, but he finds evidence that they were cut on the ground and then assembled in place. In other words, they were cut with high precision and then put up there, and they were done so well that so he's like, okay, look, you can barely see this line. There's a carving, high relief of a dog. Here we go. Dog part.
Yeah.
There's a high relief of a dog, right? One of those thin Egyptian style dogs or whatever with the tall ears.
Yeah.
And in one case, he's able to tell where a dividing line is because there's been shifting over time, right? So the blocks have shifted, so you can see that, and that the line is in the middle of the dog. Okay, so because there's been shifting, you can tell where it's shifted, but otherwise the lines are invisible.
Yeah.
It looks like single pieces of stone. The lines are so clean. So that makes him able to go look elsewhere, and he finds like, yeah, there are actually tiny, barely visible lines that go right through some of these high relief carvings. That to him speaks to the idea that they were actually crafted on the ground with high precision and then placed up there. And they fit together so well that once they merge them together, the line disappears. That's why he calls it a miracle.
Yeah. I guess if they weren't, like if you cut the block to where you put it together and you see this perfect seam between them, then you start carving away at it, you might open up into a gap somewhere that you couldn't see when you put the two blocks together because the front edge closed up perfectly.
Yeah. That's true.
So kind of, I don't know. But the other thing about manufacturing them somewhere else and then putting them up there, that gives you the option to, if there's a big mistake made in the carving process, then you can just replace it with another block.
Yeah.
Whereas if you build the entire structure and then start carving it, there should be mistakes all over it.
Right. It shouldn't be perfect, which it pretty much is, except for, like earthquake damage and stuff like that.
I mean, it would be very hard, but the point is that you would be able to, you could expect more precision afterwards.
Yeah.
If you did it, if you manufactured them on the ground before you put them up there.
Yeah. He thinks that allows you for more precision because you're doing all of your carving in a set place with tools that are set, as opposed to like climbing up there on scaffolding or trying to mount tools, even if you have machines or whatever, and having them do it, So he says, I have spent a considerable amount of time trying to come to terms with how this temple was assembled. As I think of this structure in the comfort of my study, it appears in my mind as a highly complex assembly of precision parts. See?
Yeah.
Even the reliefs on the architraves appear to conform to a particular pattern. Though there are variations between the anthropomorphic reliefs depicted in Figure 7.13, their overall shape and dimension is remarkably similar. So he's basically saying it looks like a machine. The temple itself is like a machine in terms of precision. That somebody made all these precision parts somewhere, and then you took it over here and you put them together, and they fit together so well that the seams disappear.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And again, like we talked about in the first part one of this, that they have these individual symbols, and these symbols are on these relief, I don't know what to call them, architraves, I guess. So like imagine you've got two columns, and then the capitals with the faces on them are above those columns, and then above that is a
sort of like a lintel
a
stone
flat, and they've got carvings all along that, right? And he's pointing out that like these symbols on these things way up here, way up there, are that you've got a dog and then you've got an owl or whatever, and they're like stamps, like you said. They're so similar to each other.
Yeah.
All the measurements and all the particulars, and like even the way the shadows hit the top, and I remember this clearly from looking at pictures in the book, like because he took a lot of pictures of the dogs going across the top. So that there's the way the dog is standing in the high relief, and there's this particular kind of shadow, and you can even get a hint of ribs.
Huh.
On all these things everywhere. And he's just like, it's precision. They're all the same.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Ah, man, it'd be cool if we built stuff like that today.
I know.
It'd be great to see some of that stuff going up.
So he says, while visiting the temple in November of 2008, I had a further discussion with Arlen Andrews about the possibility that the Temple of Dendera was carved before being assembled. The topic came up when he was pondering how the reliefs were carved on the walls in the stairways to the roof. These stairways are very narrow, and the walls on both sides are intricately carved with reliefs. The blocks that comprise the walls are fitted with an exactness similar to that found on the casing stones of the Great Pyramid. The joint is noticeable only because of the leaching of salts between the surfaces.
Wow. That's crazy.
This is common throughout the entire temple and is the only reason we are able to see the finely fitted joints on the capitals in the Great Hypostyle Hall. So in the pictures, these stairways, the walls on either side of the stairway are incredibly high. They're, again, 45, 50 feet, and the stairway is really narrow, like one shoulder width, right? If you're walking up there, your shoulders are basically almost brushing the walls on either side of you, and they're really, really tall. And there's just gorgeous relief artwork on both sides all the way up. And he's just
how
like,
do you do that?
Who did that?
How do you do that if they're already built?
Right.
Can't even swing your
Right.
copper
You're
or
like,
your
"Gink-gank,
stone hammer.
gink-gank,
Yeah.
gink-gank."
You got to carve them both at the same time.
Yeah, like, man, Johnson, stop hitting my wall when you're doing your backswing on trying to carve your reliefs. Yeah. So I thought that was a great point. The pictures of that hallway with the stairs going up, the stairs at the very bottom, and the walls are incredibly high, and there's just all this relief work. And this is, Dendera. So like people have pointed out how difficult it is to get photographs of the Dendera light bulbs, quote unquote,
Yeah.
because they're in one of these.
Oh, that's where they are.
The reason they're hard to get pictures of is because you're backed up against one wall and you're trying to hold your camera as far away as you can and take a picture because it's right there on the other wall.
Yeah.
You're in this narrow space. I don't know if it's in a stairway, but it's very narrow where those Dendera light bulbs are. So it's a common feature throughout this. And then, of course, they're very tall, and there's just these beautiful, and it's high relief. It's the hard way to carve stuff. Everything is sticking out of the wall instead of indented in. And it isn't plaster. It's carved into the stone. A lot of later Egyptian temples or whatever, they would plaster the walls and then carve the stuff out of the plaster. But this is cut into the rock, and it's it's just very shiny and polished, maybe by time. I don't know, but you can see shines on it. But all the carvings they go all the way up, and they're just beautiful high relief, and they all are very similar. So he's just pointing out, like, it looks like just like you would assemble the engine for a car. All the parts are machined at all these various shops to a high degrees of precision, so that when you get all the parts in, they just slide together.
Yeah.
And there are videos on YouTube of very highly precision machined pieces. Like it'll be some of them are really fascinating pieces of metal, and they're machined to go together. They fit together with some complex curve or whatever. And when they put them together, the gap just vanishes. It just, they slide it together, just, and the line goes whoop and just disappears. And it's this cube now instead of two pieces.
That's awesome.
Or they have there's another one where it's a cube or a piece of metal, like a cube of metal, and there's this complex hole cut down into it. And they've got the other piece of metal that fits down into that hole, and it's got a complex shape. And they put it down in there and they let it go, and it slowly slides down in. And then when it finally gets all the way down, the lines just vanish. You can't even freaking tell where it is. And it's like that. This temple is like that. These blocks were all carved to such high, with all the reliefs on them. And when they put them together, the seams just disappear. And in a lot of cases, the only reason we can see them now is because either there's been shifting because of earthquakes, or like he says, salts are leaching out between the blocks.
That's incredible. So yeah, there's a building in downtown Kerrville. It's a historic building right across from our little store. And I parked on that side of the road one day in front of that building. It's like some old mansion or something.
Oh yeah, it's the Shriner thing or something.
Yeah,
okay.
Shriner Mansion or something. I don't know. But I was getting in my truck to leave, and I'm like looking at this building, and I'm like, oh my God, it's these archways, and it's all built out of limestone, and these archways and everything are carved with just beautiful, like organic, like leaves and vines and stuff.
wow.
All
Wow.
highly detailed in the limestone. And it comes down onto the columns, and there's like, where the limestone meets the top of the columns are granite. And they're only, I don't know, they're like 10 inches in diameter or something, and maybe 3 feet tall. And then they meet limestone again, limestone sort of like plinth down at the bottom.
Yeah.
But where they meet the granite, it's like, as the granite goes up and meets the limestone, it's just the limestone is just like this plume of leaves and all this stuff coming out, and it's just beautiful. And I had to get out of the truck, shut the truck off and go walk around, because it's got this wrought iron fence and you can't get close to it. But around one side of the front porch there, that's all underneath limestone. Like the limestone comes out, and I mean the front doors are just amazing. It's beautiful. So I went around the side where I could get close to one of the columns and look at it, and yeah, I was like, how did they do this? Like, there's two blocks that meet at this corner, and they both have part of this carving, but it just seamlessly passes from one stone to the other.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And I was like, they had to do this carving off site somewhere, because they're high relief.
Yeah.
The blocks are where it goes to the normal face of the blocks. It goes in.
Yeah.
The leaves are sticking out on these corner, and it's cool. It's because it's the corner of the building, and so they're coming up on the corner and they're sticking out further than the corner.
Yeah.
And then it goes into an arch on one side.
Oh wow.
And so then there's the other arch blocks that meet with that, but they continue the design going. I was just
so they've
blown
been
away.
machined it somewhere else and then brought them in and assembled it. Yeah, that's what he's talking
It's
about.
awesome. You got to go check it out next time you're over
I'll have to look at that. But yeah, so I just want people to remember that we're talking about, this is Chris Dunn writing this. So he is a manufacturing guy. He's an engineer, and he's looking at this temple, and he's like, his impression is that it's so precise. He calls it a miracle. He's like, this temple is so at the end of the book, he's like, okay, so there was this recent, he mentions it multiple times throughout the book that there was a recent thing to try to redo the, what were the 7 ancient wonders of the world or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, if I was going to give mine, this temple, he gave as number 1. He's like, it is like above the statues, above the Serapeum boxes. Like, he lists that temple as the number 1, thing of wonder of the ancient world, because of what he sees in it as an engineer. He's like, this whole thing was crafted somewhere in a stone machine shop and brought and assembled on site. That's the only way.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
The Watcher says the columns are 17 meters high, which is 55 3/4 feet.
Wow.
How wide are they?
Yeah, can you find out what their diameter is?
Yeah, Watcher. Kenya? Huh?
Kenya? Huh? Huh?
S.
Searching. Secret code.
Oh.
So yeah, he says, chapter 8, this is from chapter 8 now, Sticks and Stones.
Picks, please.
Sticks and Stones, Tools of the Trade. That's the name of the chapter. He says, we are taught that during the 3,000 years that the ancient Egyptians flourished on this planet, the tools used by men and women did not change. How could this be? The finely crafted and precise boxes inside the pyramids of Giza were supposedly created in the 4th dynasty, 2500 BCE, or 4,500 years ago. The finely crafted and precise boxes inside the rock tunnels of the Serapeum were supposedly created in the 18th dynasty, 1550 to 1200 BCE, or 3,500 years ago. We are asked to believe that in a 1,000-year span, the ancient Egyptians did not make any significant improvement in their tools and methods for cutting hard igneous rock.
Fantastic point.
We, however, have examined the results of their labor, and it is clear that the Egyptians were not stupid people. In fact, they were geniuses in their accomplishments, and yet we are to accept that while they tapped into the awesome power of the human spirit and creativity, they did not ask, over the course of a full millennium, how they could do their job better, how they could demand less pain and strain from their workforce, how they could do more with less effort, how they could reduce injuries and provide workers with more time off. Is there any mystery to ancient Egypt? If there is any mystery to ancient Egypt, it is why a paradigm that was established 130 years ago still holds force among many Egyptologists and archaeologists.
Man, laying it down.
I know, just kicking their asses. What time we got here?
Oh, yeah, we need to take a break.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm real slow because my mouse is at the other studio
Yeah.
for rock and roll.
His pad. His super pad.
Yeah,
is
the
not here.
trackpad.
Yeah.
Super slow. All right, snakes. And we're back. Final segment.
Final segment.
Final hour of the final show. Just kidding.
The very last Snake Bros show. No.
Total joke. You are listening to a outtake of the Prisoner outro
That's right.
from the Prisoner EP, FTD.
Yeah. Lots of the bumper music we have on here is like, stuff in the trash, basically. It's stuff pulled out of the trash of $50 Dynasty.
That recording right there was actually when I wrote that outro, and then we converted it into what became the actual outro.
Right. So we pull out of the trash to use it on the show.
That's right. It's called Prisoner Long Night, which is how it came to be.
That's right. Okay, so this segment may go long because I need to finish this. I'm like part 3.
Yeah, go on.
So here we go. In 1986, when I visited the Cairo Museum, I asked a friendly Egyptologist guide how the pyramids were built. He led me to 2 cases where a collection of copper implements were housed. In it were several copper chisels and other assorted implements. After having spent 3 days exploring the plateau and going through each of the pyramids more than once, I stared at this case in disbelief. How could these paltry, primitive tools be responsible for such an engineering accomplishment? It just didn't seem possible, especially after seeing the enormous amount of granite used in the construction. Yet here, a respected Egyptologist insisted that it was so. It turns out that nothing has persuaded Egyptologists to think otherwise in the 2 decades since that time. I asked the guide how it was possible that a soft metal such as copper could cut hard stone, particularly granite. His answer was to guide me to a travel agent through whom I could buy plane tickets to Aswan, where he said I could see how the granite was quarried. He explained that slots were cut into the granite and then wood was inserted into the slots and soaked with water. After the wood swelled, the hydraulic pressure caused the granite to split. It was then dragged out of the quarry on sleds, transported down the Nile River on barges to Cairo, and subsequently to the pyramids where it was fitted into place. The guide gave me the official understanding of Egyptologists, who have surveyed the accomplishments of the ancient Egyptians and considered what scholars found in the archaeological record, and thereby concluded that they possessed all they needed to explain everything. There was no mystery. Everything was available to explain how all the artifacts from that period were crafted. The chisels in the case were there, so obviously they played a part. At the Aswan quarries, there were dolerite balls lying around, so they obviously played a part. And tombs were found with carpenters' instruments in them, so they obviously played a part as well. The unfortunate fact is that singly and collectively, these tools do not explain the full scope of the work. The copper chisel will not cut granite, but copper that is rubbed against quartz sand, which in turn rubs against stone, will wear both the copper and the stone. The impact of a dolerite hammer or pounder that is struck against a rock surface will crush the surface slightly, and after the loose material is brushed aside, more pounding can remove more material. A flint chisel struck against rock will crush the impact point so that the small amounts of rock may be removed to accomplish fine detailing. All of this work has been demonstrated by experimentalists who have attempted to explain how the ancient Egyptians built their monuments. In fact, a tremendous effort has gone into demonstrating how these simple tools worked and why they belong in the ancient Egyptian toolbox. What is lacking in all the experiments that purport to explain how the ancient Egyptians crafted their statues and monuments are detailed manufacturing processes that leave us convinced that these methods are accurate and true to the evidence. To accomplish this, experimentalists must follow these steps. Have experts examine rigorously and thoroughly the original artifact, paying close attention to the most difficult characteristics to reproduce. Describe the theorized method used by the Egyptians. Perform the work, including that which is the most difficult. Compare the experimental results with the original artifact, taking into account all the characteristics of the original. In all cases, experimentalists have only accomplished steps 2 and 3. Where steps 1 and 4 have been attempted, evidence has been overlooked or ignored. There is no argument that a hard stone bashed onto a softer stone will remove some of the softer stone. Will a flint chisel in the hands of a careful craftsman enable the craftsman to form stone into three-dimensional shapes such as small statuettes or hieroglyphs? Absolutely. Can quartz sand abrade rock in such a way that it gradually wears away the rock and leaves an impression of the object used to press down on or rub against the quartz? There is no argument that it cannot. An army of researchers could make 1,000,000 slots in granite using flat and tubular pieces of copper that rub back and forth on sand, but unless the results match the evidence left behind by the ancient Egyptians, these results prove nothing about the ancient Egyptian stoneworking methods. Steps 1 and 4 are not fully satisfied.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So what he's pointing out there, and I just want to kind of reiterate it real quick, is that yes, in certain circumstances, you can take a stone diorite ball and wham it on other rock and remove material. That is true. No one argues that. In other cases, you can take a top copper tube drill using sand or a big copper saw using sand, and you can rub it on a harder stone like granite, and you can remove material. No one argues that either. The question is does your cut look like the cuts that the ancient Egyptians left on granite? That has not been satisfied. They just show you, look, it will cut it. And they leave it at that.
Yeah. And he's saying that you need to examine the most difficult aspects.
You must, yes.
Or like the most complex aspects
Right.
of it and try to reproduce those with the same.
Right. So he's saying steps 1 and 4 have not been done. So first step is have experts examine rigorously and thoroughly the original artifact, paying close attention to the most difficult characteristics to reproduce.
Yeah.
That has not been done, but he's trying to do it in this book, right? Step 4 is compare the experimental results with the original artifact, taking into account all the characteristics of the original.
Yeah.
So those two steps, the first one and the last one, are never done by people trying to show you that Egyptians could do stuff with copper chisels and stuff. What he's pointing out is like, look, these artifacts that are being left behind do not have the characteristics of something being cut with those methods. They just don't.
Right.
Okay. So we already
show me the tool shirts.
show me the tool shirts. Yeah, Brett's like, I can put a notch in a brick with a butter knife, but don't ask me to cut it clean through. Yeah. So
do it with your forehead. Break that brick.
So we already went through the chapter 9 Shadow of the Obelisk on part 1, but I marked this because I want to read it because it's interesting. He is quoting the text engraved into one of these obelisks by the person who supposedly ordered the obelisk to be cut. Okay. So this is what it says on the obelisk. This is the translation. So as regards these two great obelisks, wrought with electrum by my majesty for my father Amun, in order that my name may endure in this temple for eternity and everlastingness, they are each made of one block of hard granite without seam, without joining together. But it's the first
Electrum.
electrum.
That's
Wrought with electrum.
Yeah. Okay. What's electrum?
Electrum is a mysterious unknown
Right.
metal. No one knows what electrum is. It's mentioned many times in the
Yeah.
in their writings, but nobody actually knows what it is. And this says these were wrought with electrum.
Slam that phone.
Slam that phone down.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
I want an electrum guitar. Yeah.
So some people think electrum is some combination of gold, silver, and copper, but I think that is based on, two things. I think that is number one, based on what the ancient Greeks may have thought electrum was, because they also mention electrum, right? But it isn't clear that what the Greeks were calling electrum was the same thing as what the Egyptians were calling it. But remember also that the Greeks got a lot of their culture from Egypt, right?
Right. And they got a lot of their knowledge of history from the Egyptian priests at the time.
Yes. So it's not clear that what the Greeks call electrum is the same thing as what these very ancient.
Yeah. And they were modern priests
Right.
at the time.
Modern priests at the time. The other point I wanted to make about electrum being made of gold, copper, some combination of gold, copper, and silver is that's because those are the three metals that were available to ancient peoples.
Oh,
according to the standard model.
Yeah.
Copper,
Right.
silver, and gold. So I just kind of like, I prefer to think like no one knows what electrum is, and that's because we don't. It may be a lost metallurgy.
So where did the word come from? Electrum. How did we end up calling it electrum? Because it sounds
It's the
like
Greek version.
That's the Greek word.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Latin.
I'm gonna have to look into the etymology of those.
I mean, like it's interesting that our word for electricity is so closely related to that electrum.
Yeah.
Electron is another.
Yeah. But yeah, we obviously were picking
Power.
the Greek names. Yeah.
Yeah. This thing that we use for power is called electricity, electric, very close to this ancient quote unquote material cutting tool, metal, something called electrum.
Right, but it's the other way around. See, we named this thing that we discovered based on some ancient
That's right.
Greek idea
Exactly.
because they associated it with
Powerful tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
power tools.
Right.
So cool.
So we also went through, in part one of this 3-part series, we also went through some of the stuff that he did in the Petrie chapter, which is called Chapter 11, Walking in the Shadow of William F. Petrie. We talked about his study of the core number 7 and some other things.
Yeah.
But because at the time I was using an actual physical paper book and I wasn't able to read, so I made some marks in this. So this is from that chapter. He says that Egyptians, let me make sure this is, yeah, okay, so this is actually Dunn quoting Petrie.
Okay.
So Petrie is saying that Egyptians were acquainted with a cutting jewel far harder than quartz, and that they used this jewel as a sharp-pointed graver is beyond doubt by the diorite bowls with inscriptions of the 4th dynasty of which I found fragments at Giza, as well as the scratches on polished granite of the Ptolemaic age at San. The hieroglyphs are incised with a very free cutting point. They are not scraped, nor ground out, but are plowed through the diorite with rough edges to the line. As the lines are only 1/150th inch wide, it is evident that the cutting point must have been harder than quartz and tough enough not to splinter when so fine an edge was being employed. probably only 1/200th of an inch wide. Parallel lines are graved only 1/30th an inch apart from center to center. Let's see. We therefore need have no hesitation in allowing that the graving out of lines in hard stones by jewel points was a known art. And when we find on the surfaces of the saw cuts in diorite grooves as deep as 1/100th of an inch, it appears far more likely that such were produced by the jewel points in the saw than by any fortuitous rubbing about of a loose powder.
Yes.
It probably should be said rubbing about. That's how he would say it. Than by any fortuitous rubbing about of a loose powder. And when further, it is seen that these deep grooves are almost always regular and uniform in depth and equidistant, their production by the successive cuts of the jewel teeth of a saw appears to be beyond question. The best examples of equidistance are the specimens of basalt number 4 and of diorite number 12. In these, the fluctuations are no more than such as always occur in the use of a saw, whether worked in wood or in stone. That's
Yeah.
Petrie responding to his critics about core number 7. He's like, look,
Yeah.
I know what I'm talking about. Okay, let's see. All right. Chronological progression. He says, if I consider all the evidence within the same engineering context without regard to the time each example was built, I am compelled to suggest that the ancient Egyptians had to have used sophisticated machines that cut diorite and granite with little difficulty. The evidence suggests that they had lathes and that the lathes were built with precise bearings that regulated the rotation of the spindle. The contoured blocks on the Giza Plateau suggest that they had machines that cut exact three-dimensional shapes on 3 axes. The telltale marks on a Ramses head at Karnak and the indentation above the eyebrow suggest that a rectangular tool was directed along a precise path while oscillating at a high frequency, like a jackhammer, against the surface. When the tool came to the eyebrow, it paused briefly, but the oscillations did not cease, and the tool cut deeper where it rested. Such signs are signatures of machining and are well-known consequences of allowing a tool to rest along its path while the cutting force is still being applied. This could be a lathe for which the tool movement may stop, but the workpiece keeps rotating, or it could be a milling machine for which the axes stop moving, but the end mill continues turning. Any machinist would recognize these marks. The accidental grooves found in the statue of Amun and Mut in the Luxor Museum are proof of tools that do not exist in the archaeological record. These grooves provide evidence of rotary grinding wheels that were used to cut fine details on these statues.
Freaking so awesome. Yeah. I'm just like speechless over here. I'm just like, so awesome. I love it.
Yeah, this is great. It is significant to note that, excluding the boxes in the Serapeum and the interiors of the coffers in Khufu's and Khafre's pyramids, that would be the two largest, that would be the Great Pyramid and the not so great pyramid. The almost as great pyramid. Khufu and Khafre. Some of the precise artifacts I have studied and included in this book were not finished to a high degree, to a high level of polish, nor do they have the striations caused by a rough abrasive that could have been used to achieve the exact geometries they demonstrate. Creating a surface to precise geometry, whether the geometry is flat line or circular, if performed by handwork, would require spot finishing. That is, attending to areas that require the discrete removal of material to achieve their final precise shape. It is surprising, therefore, to find surfaces that are finished to within 0.001 inch that do not exhibit any signs of polish at all. Having produced precision surfaces by hand finishing and with machine-guided tools, when I examine surfaces created by the ancient Egyptians, it is clear to me that machines were involved in their creation. And I mentioned this on the last one. He's basically saying, a lot of these things are not polished, and yet they're so perfect.
It can't be done by hand.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no polishing. Their tools were so precise that there was no polishing necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. Destroyed. Standard model obliterated. Throw it in the trash. Why are they not throwing it in the trash?
Right. Finally, he says, there is the important question of precision. Chiseling and hand polishing a surface that compares to a surface produced by a modern machine when the object's purpose is to serve as an architectural element above a doorway, for example, does not make sense. It is completely unnecessary for the function it fills. The architectural elements found near the Valley Temple on the Giza Plateau and at the Temple of Dendera and other temples, however, were crafted by precise machine tools that produced precise products requiring no secondary finishing. And I think the point that he's trying to make here, and this may be just because I know from the greater context of the book, when he's talking about this kind of precision for architectural elements doesn't make sense, right? What he's pointing out is that we have a lot of objects in our everyday lives that have precision that's unnecessary, and that's because they are created by machines that have extremely high levels of precision.
Right.
In other words, a big manufacturing plant has all these machines that are able to make precision stuff. Now, certain objects you have don't necessarily need that level of precision, but they get it because they're made by those machines.
Yeah.
So that's what he's pointing out here. It doesn't make sense if you're doing it by hand to have this level of precision on architectural elements. It's just that their machines made that level of precision because that's how they were built, and that's why these architectural elements have this level of precision.
Yep. Makes sense.
Okay. So this is the basically the final part of the book here. Where are the machines? No machines have been found in the archaeological record to support these assertions, but there is an abundance of circumstantial evidence that leads to such conclusions. Are the machines still intact and lying under the desert sand? Or were they removed completely from the area? Or could it be that all this evidence points to an earlier civilization that suffered a cataclysm of such magnitude that much of what existed was destroyed and what remained was susceptible to erosion, decay, and corrosion, and slowly disappeared over a long period of time? This brings us back to Robert Schoch's evaluation of the erosion pattern on the Sphinx and the Sphinx enclosure. He claimed that the period of time when sufficient rain fell in Egypt to cause this erosion was 7,000 to 9,000 years ago. Is this sufficient time for ancient machines to turn to dust and blow away? It seems incredible to imagine, but there is reason to suspect that this could have happened. Pushing the history of the pyramids back in time is not a new concept. Stephen Mailer, in his book Land of Osiris, refers to his work with Abdul Hakim Awian, an Egyptian native who was considered a cultural wisdom keeper and has a lineage that can be traced back to pre-dynastic Egyptians known as Kemetians. Or Kemetians, I'm not sure how to say it. Their homeland was known as Kemet, or KMT, given that ancient Kemetians did not use vowels in their language. This is where the term alchemy comes from. Chemistry, Kemet, the land of Egypt, where alchemy and chemistry was born.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they made electrum.
That's right. While it is only hearsay passed down through countless generations, the opinions of these elders should be considered. And Hakim's opinion on the age of the pyramids would have pushed it back even further than what Robert Schoch would support, given the geological evidence. Miller writes, quote, "When I first heard Hakim speak of the Sphinx in November of 1992, he calmly asserted that she was over 52,000 years old." So according to his oral traditions of his people, the Sphinx is 52,000 freaking years old. Stories of an older civilization have long been maintained in the traditions of indigenous peoples, who refer to them as a time when the gods ruled the earth. This period in Egyptian lore is generally dismissed by Egyptologists as legend. And those who would propose such ideas, such as Schwaller de Lubitz and others, are considered New Age, which is in some circles a pejorative label, and they are ignored. Yet there is mounting evidence and professional opinion that lead us to consider the old legends and take them more seriously. One example is the opinion of architect Dr. Hossam Abulafatu, sorry if I'm butchering that name, who maintains that the so-called workers' village of Giza, and this has been shown to me so many times in arguments online. This is proof of what built the pyramids, because there's like a village, and this is where the workers were, and they built the pyramids, right?
Yeah.
Workers' village. Who maintains that the so-called workers' village of Giza could not have been built by the same artisans who built the pyramids. We are left, therefore, to consider the idea of an older culture that was more gifted in architectural design and execution than has been commonly accepted. There is no question that the Great Pyramid is the most sophisticated and precise of all the structures on the Giza Plateau, and frankly, of all the buildings in the world. If we follow the idea of an older civilization, therefore, the pyramids would have already been there before the first dynasty of the ancient Egyptians. The Great Pyramid was most likely the zenith of construction on the plateau, and the other pyramids were likely built before it was. Yet something happened to the culture that built the pyramids, and when Khufu came on the scene, he naturally chose the most impressive structure, the Great Pyramid, as his own, and his heirs took turns in claiming the rest. What event could have brought death and destruction to this ancient civilization that is referred to in Egyptian lore as being inhabited by the gods of the first time? As I concluded my research in Egypt, I pondered what might have driven the ancient Egyptians to devote their resources to such enormously difficult tasks, and I wondered how an advanced civilization would react if it had knowledge of an impending doom. This is really the part that I wanted to get to. Think about this. Perhaps it would turn its genius and industry into leaving a message that would survive the coming cataclysm and provide a technological imprint to say to future generations, "We were here. This is who we are and what we are capable of doing." Modern society builds obsolescence into everything it makes. The ancient Egyptians may have spent their last days on Earth building for eternity and preparing for the afterlife. They were obsessed with the afterlife. It was all that mattered to them. Is it not all that matters to us too? If so, then why do we wait until we are faced with our own mortality before giving it any attention? It seems that the continuity of generations provides us with a comforting belief in our immortality. A part of us will live on after we die. We are also comfortable leaving things for the next generation to fix or address. Yet if we knew that there would not be another generation, how would we behave? If we knew that a day was coming when most of life on the planet would cease to exist, what kind of shock would that give our psyche? Earthly matters that normally consume our minds would surely be replaced with thoughts of the afterlife and how we would continue after we die. Did the ancient Egyptians have knowledge of an impending catastrophe? Their marvelous spires of granite at Karnak were protected by walls, though we don't know if those walls were filled with sand or not. Why was it necessary to build a wall around Hatshepsut's obelisk? Many obelisks were not similarly protected, and some of them have fallen in prehistory. Massive statues like those of Ramses at the Ramesseum have toppled over at some time in prehistory. There was an event that devastated this civilization, and there are signs that they knew it was coming. Mud brick walls were built around some structures. Some smaller statues now exhibited in the Luxor Museum were buried in the temple, and a scene on the ceiling of the great hypostyle hall at Dendera describes the goddess Nut overarching and protecting the solar barks in procession through the heavens as they carry their dead through the Duat. Perhaps the Egyptians used their time left on the planet to cut deep into the hillside in the Valley of the Kings and create an extensive network of tunnels and chambers. Was KV-5 the recently explored underground complex credited to Ramses II and his family, with its 121 chambers, supposedly created for his sons, did he not have daughters, actually built as an attempt to survive impending catastrophe and continue the species? The purpose of this book is not to answer these questions, but to propose possibilities based on the artifacts that are left. To question the historical account of ancient Egypt is disturbing to some. The responses to my previous writing on the subject have prompted me to present better evidence. I believe I have accomplished this here. Others will no doubt weigh in on the subject, and I am sure some will object to my conclusions. Though the subject of the kinds of tools used by the ancient Egyptians to cut stone holds a continuing interest for many professionals and lay people alike, the debate has to move beyond the question of what cut the stones to an even more crucial question. What guided the tools? What was guiding the tools? The amazing geometry and precision of ancient Egyptian artifacts cannot be lost in the debate about whether a coring tool left its mark as helical or horizontal grooves. Though resolving this question is important, it would not be as important without the massive amount of contemporaneous evidence that demands another thorough examination of our past. When we attempt to answer questions of how the ancient Egyptians created their monuments, the most difficult aspects of the work must be identified and replicated to the same form and precision of the originals. Why is this important? For many people, manufacturing precision is an abstract concept with which they have no personal involvement. Precision manufacturing demands strict adherence to a blueprint or engineering drawing. To replicate an object that is already made, it is necessary to make blueprints describing every characteristic of the object and to make sure that the copy of the original is the same. We are surrounded by precise objects which populate and shape our environment, but there was a time in history when this was not the case. In less time than the whole of ancient Egypt's fourth dynasty, the period of 119 years during which the Great Pyramid was supposedly built, civilization has moved from a predominantly manually intensive agrarian society in which the apprentice was unpaid and beholden to the master to learn his trade, to one that trains school children how to live with technology so sophisticated and rapidly changing that often the children are called upon to teach their parents how to use it. My background in precision machining has given me an enduring and profound respect for what this dizzying progress of knowledge and technology has brought to our society. Over the years, scores of engineers and craftspeople have contacted me to tell me they share my perspective. One such engineer is Stephen Garcia from Chicago, who visited Egypt more than 40 years ago. In one of my discussions with him, he complained to me that I was not assertive enough in my treatment of ancient Egyptian artifacts and that I should be adamant that they could not have been produced without machines. Yet, though I may not have been overly assertive in my beliefs on this subject, what I have written in the past has opened the debate. Since I started to publish my thoughts on this subject, I have continued to study the responses to my work, as well as the evidence that has been offered to support the academic theories. Taking into account all of the foregoing evidence, I will assert now, unequivocally, that what has been found in the archaeological record and used by experimentalists must be dismissed as grossly inadequate to the task of producing the marvelous artifacts of ancient Egypt. What, however, do we replace them with? How were the Ramses statues crafted? How much time would it take a sculptor to create the 1,000-ton colossi of Memnon, or the 1,000-ton Ramses at the Ramesseum, or the 4 colossal seated statues at Luxor? Appearing on the base of the Ramesseum Ramses is a verse by the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus. King of kings am I, Ozymandias. If anyone would know how great I am and where I lie, let him surpass one of my works. The challenge issued by Ramses to Diodorus Siculus in the 1st century BCE has not been met. But when it is fulfilled, Egypt's true manufacturing genius will be recognized and understood. When we consider a culture that created an array of artifacts that in their variety exhibit incredible size, symmetry, and precision in materials that even today are among the most difficult on earth to shape and move, and we know what could not have produced them, the mystery of ancient Egypt looms before us like a stupendous abyss between that astonishing time in human endeavor and our own. It beckons to us across the ages and demands that we are as exacting and uncompromising in our quest for answers as the Egyptians were in crafting the artifacts that confront us with the questions and the challenge: what am I? How did I come to exist? Build another just like me.
So awesome.
End of book.
So good. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
He said it all.
That's right.
So good.
All right, Watcher, you got some thoughts? What's up?
Something went wrong there with the Watcher.
Your mic was on. You just turned it off. Turn it back on.
All right. So, first off, it's interesting to me that the debate on whether the Egyptians did it one way or the other, standard model versus everybody who's not a sculptard, it works like this, which is a non-solving method. The people who say they did it with the chisels and wood and fairy dust are the ones that are like, okay, well, here, I'm going to prove to you that I can do this, right? And they don't, but they get just enough to say, like, see, they totally could have done it.
Yeah.
Whereas the other side says, we currently don't have machines precise enough to do that.
In some cases,
No one has ever tried to design a machine, go in and build an uber precise machine. Maybe we could. We just don't have any necessity for it.
Yeah, I think he pointed out at one point that if we were actually tasked, like if there was a client that hired an engineering company to actually make one of these artifacts, then the company, if they didn't have the tools to do it, would just start building
the
tool.
tools. Yeah.
Right.
We just don't we don't have those tools because they're not, nobody's coming to you with the money to pay for the artifact, for this replica of this artifact.
Right.
And there's no motivation in proving someone wrong that you know is wrong.
Yeah. His point was like, we can't build these artifacts, but we could, basically.
Right. So, an apocalyptic event maybe gives the necessity. So that's very interesting to think about.
Yeah.
The thing that I originally was going to come on for, this concept of electrum, not to be the guy who brings mercury into everything, but
You are that guy.
mercury forms an amalgam with both silver or gold.
Yeah.
In the presence of both, you would have two variable conductors. Mercury spins in the presence of a magnetic field. The amount of voltage you put into it increases the rate of its spin. Maybe that's how you cut with electrum. I'm just saying.
No, that's interesting. Interesting idea.
All right, good point there, Watcher.
Build us one.
Yeah.
Seriously?
No, I'm not sculpting you. I'm like, I want a Shamir. Build me one.
Yeah.
Do it now.
I do too. You know what? I think we should all come up with a way that it can be done and then tell Brenner it's up to him.
Perfect. All right. I think that's the end of that.
That was fantastic. Man. Great job.
Thank you.
Great 3-part series. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good. Your job to do a 3-part series next.
Yeah. No problem. Hey guys, how you doing?
Pyramids
Part
are
one.
cool. Pyramids are cool. What was that what you said? Not doing this show by yourself?
Yeah.
All right. As you guys know, you can get a hold of us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. And remember, if you send me an email and you don't want me to read it on the show, say that at the beginning of the email. Otherwise, I will consider it fair game. Check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Get the snake skins there. That's our merchandise store. You can comment on any of the shows there. We do read all the comments. Check out the encyclopedia and the glossary to get all the terms and weird stuff we talk about and weird names of places. Follow us on Twitter @SnakeBros with no vowels, SNKBRS.
Share the shows.
Yeah.
And donate to our pyramid scheme.
Yes.
And also the Patreon pyramid
right.
scheme.
That's right. And thanks to all of you.
Sacred number scheme.
Sacred number scheme. Yeah.
It's all a pyramid scheme.
It's all part of the pyramid scheme.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone who has donated.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Again and again. Very much appreciated.
Yeah. And give us reviews. go to iTunes and give us reviews. That always helps in promoting the show. And if you actually write a review, I will almost always read it on the show. I don't think I've ever skipped reading a review on the show yet. So, yeah.
Check out the Facebook group with the Watcher and Grand Watcher.
That's right. George Howard is on there. Yep. It's run by Jordan. Thanks to Jordan very much for doing that.
Thanks a lot.
Really appreciate that. We also have the Library of the Serpent.
Aha! Yes.
This is a new thing. I don't have all the details with me right now, but I will get that, and we'll add that to the end of the show stuff, and I'm going to put links to it on the website, so that'll all be there. I think that's Jeff, and if I'm getting that name wrong, I'm very sorry. But I will have all those details next show to make sure. I just wanted to point out there's a Library of the Serpent where people are putting together all this information, and I think it's also in the Facebook group too. So, and there's a blog for it. So I'll have all that information next show. But right now,
It's Jeff.
It's Jeff. Good.
Yeah, it's Jeff.
Got the name right.
He's got a Google Drive archive that he's filling with snake tomes.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and he's in the Facebook group, right? Watcher? Isn't he in there?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
he's already shared it in there. Like I've been able to leave, dude. It's awesome.
Yeah, so George Howard contributed. All the papers on the Younger Dryas impact stuff is in there, and it's just and we're just gonna keep filling. It's a community thing. So if people have interesting stuff that's free, it's free to access. Obviously, we're not going to be putting any paid material in there, but anything that's free to access, we put it in the Serpent library. So being run by Jeff. So thanks to him very much.
Yeah, genius idea.
Fantastic idea. And don't forget about History Shift. Follow him on Twitter at History Shift. Check out his blog, historyshift.com, where he details his adventures at looking for dolmens and glacial erratics in Montana. He makes all of our YouTube videos for us. So he takes all the podcasts, all the audio, and turns it into videos and puts them on YouTube. So you can follow us on YouTube, Brothers of the Serpent, and you can also follow him on YouTube. Just look up History Shift. So thanks to him very much.
Also,
lots of work.
Check out Henry Hablack.
Yes.
At H Hablack on Instagram, on
That's right.
Twitter.
All of his artwork is awesome.
He's making a new series.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, with serpentine
So,
long
check it
heads.
It's good stuff.
Yep. He's also got a website, hermetica.bigcartel.com. That's Hermetica with a K. So check him out there. And what else? Oh, yeah, Bitmovio.
Oh, yeah.
Watch our videos there because we get paid somehow. I don't know how it works.
We're not sure.
I think Brandon History Shift was telling me that people get like points somehow by watching videos through Bitmovio, and then they can spend those points by giving stars or something to specific videos, and then that's how you get paid.
Oh, okay.
So people give you stars, which is their credits for watching other videos, then you get paid somehow.
Amazing.
It's amazing, yeah. Money just appears out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
So I think it's bitmove.io. So, Bitmovio.
And take that standard model, crumble it up, and throw it in your precisely manufactured trash can. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. We love you.
Always have.
Always will. Good night, Adamu. Get back to work.